Today's guest has a story you're not going to forget. I'm not even going to try to read what they've posted about it because you just need to hear it from them. But as I read this, as I was reading his story and I was talking to him, I'm thinking to myself, is there anything people won't do to hurt each other? Like, are there limits? Well, if you've been a victim of cheating, you probably don't think so. It does seem like the cheater will do anything to have their cake and eat it too, and they often don't care who they run over in the process. Or in the case of our guest today, they not only run them over, but they reverse the car and continue running over them. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Let's just start right at the beginning. Give us like a brief history of your relationship and how long you've been together with Pam and just kind of the health of the relationship in the early days.
Okay. Um, in sixth grade, Pam and her identical twin sister moved in with her father in near my house. Her father was a trainer very for a member of a very famous family on the East Coast. He trained their horses. He took care of the horses on their farm. So they moved in with their father. Um, so this is about sixth grade. So we went to grade school together. We went to junior high together. Went to high school together. We were in in some of the same friend groups. Pam and I went to the junior prom together in high school. Never really dated formally in high school. Then we went to college together at a large flagship state institution on the East Coast. Um, Pam and her identical sister were roommates, and we hung out a lot in college. Pam and I were both business majors, so whenever we registered for classes, we were always in the same classes, so we could study together. We studied together a lot, uh, hung out a lot. Didn't really start seriously dating until our senior year in college, and then from there we were a couple. Um, we probably were dating for about 2 years, and then we got engaged. And about 6 months after we got engaged, we were married. Um, we were both both business majors. We were both career oriented in our early careers. Like I said, she was a horse person and still is. Horses were a very important part of her life. Yeah, it's part of her family. Her father was a horse trainer. Her grandfather was a horse trainer. All like the uncles on her father's side were all horse trainers and stuff. Um, so we're married about 4 years and had our first child, a boy. It was a bit of a difficult pregnancy. She went into preterm labor, and our son was born about 6 weeks early. Um, and from there, both of us decided she was going to be a stay-at-home mom, and so she quit her pharmaceutical sales job and stayed home with her son. Um, she spent a lot of time with her son. Take her son to her where her dad, the farm where her dad worked. So her son could play with his grandfather, she was happy. And we were a young family. Um, about the time when my son was about about a year, 18 months old. She had asked me, I'm thinking about renting a barn and starting my own horse business. I'm like, I didn't really like the idea at the time, um, because I knew she's a horse person and the barn becomes kind of a black hole to her sometimes. She could kind of just disappear for hours with her, with her horses, and kind of forget the world kind of exists and where she was looking at. It just really didn't make sense. So, like, you know what? Tell you what, I'm doing pretty good in my career. Let's look for a horse farm. So, so around about the time my son was 18 months old, um, he we bought a 20-acre piece of property. Piece of property only had a double wide on it, and we started building a horse farm. Um, yes, all my weekends were spent putting in fencing and things like that. And I mean, horses weren't exactly my thing, but yeah, I loved her. It was her passion, and it was good. And it was, we spent it was good spending time with each other.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if it doesn't sound like the equestrian world is something that you have much of a vested interest in, and this is something that really
Right.
was your wife's world, but
Yes.
you were very
Yes.
supportive.
Yeah. Yeah. I was very supportive of it. Um, let's just say she was extremely excited about the horse farm, and we had a lot of affection in the first month or so that we had the horse farm, and and she was quickly became pregnant with our second, and that was a much more difficult pregnancy and kind of set into motion uh, all of the events that ended up, yeah, in where we ended up. Um, about week 26 of her pregnancy, she went into preterm labor. So she was on hospital bed rest from week 26 until she delivered in week 40. Yeah, in the meantime, I was working a full-time job. We had a horse farm that we had to take care of. Also had a 2-year-old. So I was extremely
Wow.
busy. Yeah, yeah,
You were a little
yeah,
busy.
yeah,
There was a few things
there was a
going on.
lot going on. Thankfully, I worked for a very large pharmaceutical company that had an excellent EAP program. Explained the situation to them. Our administrative coordinator, she was a saint. She called all the daycares in the area within like five that are within about 5 or 10 minute drive of the office, and she set up interviews for me, got all that in motion, so I was able to quickly get my son into daycare. Um, and it was an extremely busy, extremely stressful, uh, 10 or 12 weeks for me because I'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, feed, water the horses, which I was also allergic to horses.
You're
But
allergic to
yeah,
horses?
yeah. I was allergic to horses. So here's a really funny story. It's maybe like a year or so after we were married, and my Pam always thought I was kind of BSing her about being allergic to horses. We were doing something at the barn and at her dad's barn, and her mom and Pam had to go in and get something. So I was stuck holding the horses, and it's one of those like ungodly humid summer days. So I was sweating, like all my pores were open. The horse was rubbing up against me, and I was breaking out in hives. And her Pam and her mom came up, and they're like, "Oh, you really are allergic to horses." But that's a funny story. But yeah, I survived on a lot of Benadryl on
My.
at the horse farm, and I was able to get through it.
So, I mean,
So
just to kind of review real quick. So, I mean, this is a person that you met. It sounds like as if I'm remembering correctly, you met in 6th grade. Is that what you said?
yes,
And you grew up with this person. This is not just some girl you dated. This is somebody that you've known for a long time. And you kind of,
yep,
I guess you could say you took your time getting romantically involved.
yeah,
So,
we grew up together.
and so she comes from an equestrian family, very much into horses. You sound, well, other than being allergic, largely indifferent to horses, but you out of love. You support her, not just support her. You had a child that you're taking care of during the end of her. It sounds like her or her third trimester in her second pregnancy. She's kind of holed up in the hospital, but you're taking care of this horse farm that you've helped build. You're allergic to horses. You're working your own job, and you're raising your 2-year old. So that's is that where we're at so far?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
go ahead.
So while she was in the hospital, um, the her father's cousin's wife, Coco, was a nurse at the same hospital that she was on hospital bed rest. Um, like her dad had a pretty large family, so I had never met them, and Pam hadn't really talked much with them or anything for a while, and they were actually her dad's cousin was probably about 20 years older than her dad actually, and her dad's cousin's wife, who was the nurse, was maybe couple years older than her dad. But so she struck up a friendship with the wife in the hospital. Yeah, she'd go visit Pam. Yeah, when she had her breaks or lunch and stuff. Because Pam was pretty bored in the hospital. She was always busy. Pam was always busy doing something. She can never sit still. So yeah, um, every day I pick my son up from daycare. Then we'd go to the hospital, eat dinner. The three of us would eat dinner, and then go home and do the horses, put my son to bed, and repeat the same process. Repeat the same process the next day. But you know, and that experience also really helped me later on too. Um, and it did tell me, like, okay, you can work a 40-hour work week, you can work a full-time job, and you can also be a parent. You just have to make some changes and make different priorities, but
And
it's
stop
doable.
sleeping, probably.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it too.
That's the
So
secret.
right. So then we found out her dad's cousin and his wife weren't lived only maybe like 10 or 15 minutes from our farm. So that's pretty cool. My Pamela has kind of a new friend, and that's okay. And my second child, my daughter, was born. Things started to get back to normal. By that time, we had more fields that were fenced in. We had more barns. We started to build the real house on the farm. Yeah, the double wide was kind of getting kind of small for the four of us now, and the dogs. So it was, we were starting to really, build up the barn. Pam started horse training business, doing lessons and boarding for hunter jumpers, teaching lessons. She started really making a name for herself in the area, because she was really good with teaching kids how to ride, and kind of became our family thing. Um, Business was growing. We were starting to get more and more stressed just with owning a business, having small kids, me working. It was stressful, but we managed.
Would you say that that stress, because that is a lot. I mean, anyone will tell you that that's a lot to take on. And I'm curious because I know we haven't even really gotten to the infidelity yet, but do you think that all of these events and all of the stress and all this overhead and responsibility contributed to what would end up being, well, her infidelity?
Yes, it did. So fast forward to about a year, and um, Pamela went over to her dad's cousin's house to help him with his horses, and his son, which would be Pamela's second cousin, was living with his dad. He's Yeah, at the time he was 49, and she was about 33, 34. I was 32. So he was much older. He was living with his dad, and that's where Pamela met the guy. So
Met her second cousin?
yeah, her second cousin.
So she
Yes.
hadn't, I mean, it's not like she has a long history with this person.
No, no, like no one. I had never met him. Her identical twin sister had never met him.
Oh, okay.
So he was, yeah. It was, like I said, her dad had a pretty big family, and there was a lot of cousins. Just like people were yeah, distant cousins and things like that.
I understand.
And so so Pamela started spending more and more time at her dad's cousin's place, helping his son out with stuff with his horses and things like that. Um, so this would probably be about maybe like early to mid 2007 or so, and late 2007, um, he had a litter of Jack Russell puppies, so we bought one of his puppies. Um, yeah, he started coming over to our place to help Pamela Pamela with her her horses and stuff, and because we probably had about 10 or 12 horses on the farm. She had a pretty full lesson schedule and things like that.
They're not all yours. She was boarding them, is that right?
Yeah. We were boarding them, and also at that time we had a family that was living in the double wide too, and yeah, they're renting it from us. So fast forward to April 2000 and April 2008, and it's my daughter's third birthday party, and we always have the whole family over for the birthday parties. We do pony rides and all that kind of stuff, and the son, she invited him to the birthday party too, and I really didn't think anything of it, but she spent a lot of time talking to him, introducing him to her mom and stepdad and all that. You know, didn't really think anything of it at the time, but after everything happened, her Pam's mom and I were talking about it. We're like, it's almost like she was introducing a new boyfriend to the family with the way she was gushing over him and all that kind of stuff. So, so, so by this time, just about every night, she was going to her dad's cousin's house to help out with the horses at her dad's cousin's. Like I said, I didn't think anything of it. He's he's family. You wouldn't think any. He really didn't arouse any suspicions. And then, um, maybe early June 2008, the son, the dad kicked his son off his farm. So now the son was homeless. And by this time, the family that was living in the double wide had moved out. They'd found a different place to live. They're looking to buy a house. They found a house and they bought it. So they moved. Um, and we offered the double wide to the guy. So in exchange for doing barn work. So he moved into the double wide. And so this was about mid June 2008, and I always had my routine when I got home from work. I had some chores that I would do around the farm, around the house, and then usually I'd make dinner, take care of the kids, because Pam was usually out teaching lessons in the late afternoon, early evening with clients. So generally I took the kids, but I'd also do some small chores around the farm and stuff. And we let the son live in the double wide in exchange for helping out on the farm. So So the son started doing a lot of my chores that I normally did when I got home. I appreciate it. Took some stuff off my plate. I was able to relax a little more in the evening. But then Pamela started to get really short and snippy with me. Like, you really don't do much around here. Um, that's kind of it. Kind of took me by surprise because I'm doing a lot. I really don't have any
Right.
hobbies other than hobbies associated with the horse farm, which I don't mind because it's family time. I get to spend time with the family, and I didn't really mind. It's not my thing, but it's spending time with my wife, spending time with my kids. That's the important thing. If we're having fun doing something, it could be throwing rocks across the yard. If we're having fun doing that, I'm fine doing that. So, but then she started change, started to get really snippy with me. Um, yes, started to really put me down. Um, then and Stan smoked like a chimney, and he was cleaning the horse stalls while smoking, and I told him to put out the cigarettes. Don't smoke near the bar in the barn areas because it's a fire hazard. And Pam got really mad at me. She's like, "Yeah, that was very disrespectful to tell him to stop smoking." I'm like, "It's a fire hazard." And yeah, and this is the same woman who, when she was a little kid, she and her twin sister would hide her grandmother's cigarettes because they didn't like her smoking. So so it just didn't make any sense.
You would think
And
with her having the equestrian background that she would be very diligent about making sure that she's limiting fire hazards by whatever means.
yeah, you would think. And started noticing some weird things with Stan too. Like in our dumpster, I'll notice every 2 to 3 days a 1.75 liter bottle of very cheap, the cheapest vodka you can find at the liquor store, empty bottle in the dumpster. So he was drinking a lot. Um, and yeah, I mentioned to Pamela, I'm like, yeah, I just don't get Stan's story. He seems to be really good with the horses. Yeah, he's really handy. He's putting in like some wood flooring in the big house. But he hasn't had a job in years, and I told Pam, like, his story just doesn't really add up, and she got extremely defensive of him. And she's like, well, he's been had a lot of bad girlfriends. His ex wife was a bitch. Every place he worked for, like the boss was a jerk. All those excuses you normally hear from, like, an quite frankly, from an alcoholic when their wife spirals out of control. Um, so throughout July 2008, yeah, in my gut, I started realizing something's up. Like, she and Stan would go on horseback rides on our property at like midnight and stuff, and say, like, kind of be snarky to Pam, like, why are you spending all this time with Stan? She's like, don't be so defensive. So she would gaslight me. She's like, he's family, for God's sakes. I'm like, okay, try and keep the peace.
So when you started to suspect things, would you say it was primarily your Pam's defensiveness of Stan that started to prompt the suspicion, followed by A midnight horseback ride and other
No,
things.
no, it wasn't those things. It was just kind of the gut feeling that she was just off.
I see.
Like, yeah, yeah, when you're in sync with like with your spouse, like you can really, yeah, you could tell when they're off. I could tell she was pulling away, but I couldn't figure out why. And then and it was just things she would just do to start putting me down. Like, I got a maybe like early July. I got a speeding ticket. There's a speed. Cops always have a speed trap out in front of our on the street in front of our house of our farm. I got pulled over. Typical, 5 or 10 above the speed limit. I was kind of, I was kind of irritated about it, but I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go and I'll tell my story, and the judge will dismiss the ticket. Blah 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 blah. And Pam was like, "Why are you being such a jerk about this ticket?" And Stan was in there, and meanwhile, Stan's being nice to me. You know, he's like, kind of like giving me relationship advice and all this kind of stuff. So I confided in him too, and and then towards the end of July, um, I had jury duty, and it happened to be the same day as the state fair horse show, and that was always a big day for our farm because the kids would be showing, and like her clients would be showing, and it's a massive to do for us. It usually takes us a couple weeks to get ready. We're always really enthusiastic about it, but I pulled jury duty that day. And I told Pam, like, I can't go because of jury duty, and she got really mad at me about that. Like, there's not much I can do. I can't get out of jury duty. Tell them I have to go to the state fair, and but she was really mad about that. And like that day, she called me, like she was just reading me out on the phone, like, you left me hanging, blah 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 blah. I'm like, what did I do? Like, there's nothing I could do about it. Do you think I really want to be sitting in the courthouse all day for jury duty? No, I'd rather be at the horse show, but it is what it is. So then the next day, I had a vasectomy scheduled, and we were talking about it for months. Like Pam and I, like, okay, what makes more sense? Getting your tube. She didn't do well with birth control. Okay, okay? Can you either get your tubes tied or I get a vasectomy? We're going back and forth. Finally, decide, okay, me getting the vasectomy. That's the way we want to go. It's the less invasive procedure versus getting her tubes tied. Cool. We made the decision. It was a family decision. So the vasectomy was on a Friday afternoon. So I went to work that day. She was supposed to pick me up at the surgery center after the vasectomy, and I'm like, so, and she knew what time I was going in. She said, yeah, your surgery's at 1 o'clock. I'll be there at 1 o'clock for the surgery. I'll be there the whole time. I'm like, okay, cool. So I show up for the surgery. She's not there. I call her. She's not answering her phone. So, okay, well, I'll just go ahead for the surgery and have the surgery. She's still not there after the surgery. I've left her a bunch of voicemails, and finally I drive home with my privates all numb, could barely feel my legs, so it probably wasn't safe for me to drive home. But yeah, I made it
Yeah,
home without.
normally they don't let you do that. They want somebody
Yeah,
to be there to take you
yeah,
home.
yeah. I'm actually kind of surprised they let me go, but they did. And so finally I get home from the vasectomy, and And I asked her, "Where were you at? You were supposed to be at my at my surgery." She's like, "Oh, something happened with Stan's horses at his dad's place, so I had to go help Stan with his horses." I was just absolutely floored that she said that. Like, and like, I had surgery. I had a surgery. I needed someone to drive me home, but you went to Stan to help him out with his horses. Like that, and like that was not cool. So so we had that weekend, um, and she was very distant from me that whole weekend. Um, I had written her a yeah, probably like a 4 or 5 page love letter, in the few weeks before that, to give to her on her 10th anniversary, which was in a few weeks. And yeah, I could just that feeling in your gut that something was going on that you just can't put your finger on. Um, she was out with Stan riding horses at midnight every night that Saturday and Sunday. So so I left the letter on the on her bedside table, and I guess like that Sunday night, she came to bed. She saw the letter. She's like, "What's this?" I'm like, "Read it." She read it, and she's like, "Thanks," and just like put it back on her bedside table and went to sleep. Like, wow, that's
Wow.
really
Yeah.
cool. That's really cold. And then the next evening, she sat me down. She said, "We have to talk." I'm like, "Okay, about what?" She's like, "Well, she told me I've changed. Um, you know, I'm I don't think you can provide me with what I need in a relationship." And I realized I'm a 100% a horse person now, and I don't want to be married to you anymore. I'm like, what? I mean, I was just absolutely just completely stunned. Like, I honestly I don't know how I like got through that night. I mean, I was just like, what the heck is going on here?
This is the day after you gave her the letter on your anniversary?
Yeah, it wasn't our anniversary yet.
Oh, I see.
Our yeah, our anniversary was in about another month and a half or so. But yeah, I'd given it to
Okay.
her early just to you know kind of see if I could spark something.
But you're
And
seeing this as a response in a way.
yeah,
It's hard not to say
yeah,
that as a response to this 4 or 5 page, I guess you could say,
yeah,
love letter to your wife.
yeah. And she was just like, thanks. I'm like, okay, like no hugs, no kisses, and like it's like she was irritated that I gave it to her. So so the next day she asked for a divorce, and I'm just absolutely stunned and shocked. So I I go to work and I'm just like an absolute wreck at work. So I just I go in and then like an hour later I just take the rest of the day off and kind of just be alone. Um, I call her twin sister and ask her like to tell her that Pam wants a divorce. I'm like I told her twin sister, I'm absolutely shocked with this. Like, did you know anything? Like, did she talk to you anything about this or anything like that? And her sister was completely stunned too. Like, I mean they're identical twins. I mean, they were roommates in college. You know, her her mom and dad were divorced. Her mom had been through 3 marriages. So for a lot of their life, they only had each other for their whole life, for a lot of their life. So, but they were extremely close. I mean they could fight like they could have like a nuclear war fight with each other, and then like 5 minutes later, like, hey, let's go out the barn and ride horses, and then they're perfectly fine.
Okay.
So, yeah, you know, yeah, it's just just the way they are. They finish each other's sentences, and
Yeah.
I was yeah, and I was extremely close to her sister as well, just because we all grew up together. They were roommates in college, all through college and stuff. So you couldn't help but be close. When Pam was on hospital bed rest, her sister came over, stayed for a couple days with me to just show me what I really needed to do to take care of the horses because yeah, to be honest, all I was really good at with the horses was building fences, mowing fields, and shoveling manure. So,
Okay.
but I mean, I was perfectly happy with that, though. That's I knew my role, and I was good at that. So, but all the other stuff just wasn't. Um, it just wasn't good at it. It's not my what wasn't my thing. I didn't grow up around them, and so from then on, uh, Pam was just an absolute terror to me for for the next couple weeks. So she found out. Of course, as soon as I called her sister called her, asked her what's going on, and and then I get home from work and Pam just lays into me. She's like, "Why did you call my sister? This is supposed to be private between you and I. Stan says that was a completely disrespectful thing that we did." And I'm like, I'm sitting there thinking, like, what did I do wrong? Like, whenever we had, any type of, any type of problems, I'd bounce ideas off her sister, and like her sister and I were really good were really good friends. She like we were kind her sister and I were like brother and sister too. Yeah, so and Pam like Pam was just like completely just she flipped the switch. I mean, she was just mean to me. Just made my life tried to make my life as miserable as possible. Started blaming me for everything. Like, she hadn't been happy the entire marriage. I'm the reason why she's not happy. Just absolutely blaming everything for to me. And and I'm like, I'm just in complete shock right now, and just completely stressed out. I couldn't eat I couldn't eat anything, and I felt like I had just been ejected into the twilight zone. I mean, it was that shocking.
So when she asked for the divorce, did you agree? Did you say let's work on it? Let's maybe consider marriage counseling? Is something that we can do about this?
I asked her, like, well, how about we do marriage counseling, because and she's like, I don't want to do any counseling. Stan said that he did marriage counseling for years with his ex-wife, and it just never worked. So she was always going with like what Stan tells her.
Mm.
Yeah, Stan is her Lord and Savior at this point, but I'm still not really suspecting Stan. I'm kind of looking as more as he's like a family member giving her advice without any.
I was gonna say after everything you've said so far, I'd say that was the biggest clue.
Oh yeah, yeah. In in hindsight, absolutely. If I knew then what I know now, Stan even have been able to live on the farm to begin with. But
Right.
you know, you know, you you live and learn. And she had the perfect cover story. Like, who would expect your wife to have an affair with her second cousin? Not very many people.
No.
Uh, so yeah, she had a perfect cover story. But I mean, she wasn't just an absolute nightmare to me. and I was in complete shock. I mean, I was at this point, like, I would do absolutely anything for the marriage. So I didn't stand up for myself or anything. One thing I suggest, like, well, I could live in the double wide. You can live in the big house while we figure things out. And she's like, well, Stan probably wouldn't like that. Like, I think that's kind of weird. But but of
Because he's
course,
living there? Is that why she said it?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why she said that. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of in the back of my mind. I felt like that was kind of weird.
Was she
But
asking you to like leave, to move out?
she was hinting at me to move out, and yeah, I kind of told her like, yeah, we can barely afford this place as it is. Like, me moving out is not in our best interest until everything is completely like we actually have have an exit plan.
Yeah.
Um, but she really wouldn't listen. But I mean, she was just making my life really miserable. Um, and maybe like a week or so later, my parents come up and talk to her, and she's going on and on and on about you know like all of my faults and all that kind of stuff, and my parents are like, no matter what you guys do, you have to get out of this as efficiently as possible if divorce is your option. Stan was overheard that whole conversation as well. So
The conversation that your parents were
between
having with her?
with yeah,
Okay.
and
So wherever Pam is and wherever whoever Pam's talking to, Stan is not far behind.
exactly, exactly. So at this point, I haven't told my sister yet. Um, like I I can be close to my sister, and sometimes I'm not. Um, I love my sister to death, but she can also be the world's biggest bitch, and she is completely proud of being that way because she her whole career has been in male dominated industries, and that's how she's able to thrive in those careers. Um, and so so I go over to finally things are just getting so stressful, and I go over to my sister's house and explain to my sister and her brother-in-law what's going on. And first thing my sister says, Pam is effing Stan.
Oh.
Because as it turns out, my brother-in-law had owned a carpet cleaning business with who was the best man in his wedding. And um, the best man's wife had cheated on him, and basically with the divorce settlement, um, his best man had to buy out my brother-in-law from the business and stuff to for that divorce settlement. So that affair affected my sister and brother-in-law. So, and my brother-in-law was really the emotional support for his business partner when that happened. So they knew all the signs and all that. That's my one of my biggest regrets was not confiding in my sister with what was going on. And Pam specifically told me not to talk to my sister, probably because she knew how big of a bee my sister is and would probably immediately call her out on her bullshit. so yeah, my sister immediately said Stan and Pam are effing.
Did
Like,
she explain why she said that?
yeah, she said, yeah, we went through this with with the business partner, and Pam is doing the exact same things that the business partner's wife did to him.
I see.
So if it walked like a duck, it talked like a duck, it's probably a duck. And yeah, kind of in the meantime, like before I talked to my sister, I had talked to Pam's twin, and starting reading up on affairs, and talked to her twin. I'm like, I think Lisa's having an affair with Stan. And her sister was like, she couldn't believe it because, yeah, you would expect your identical twin sister to have an affair with a relative. So inadvertently, her sister tried to kind of gaslit me too. But it wasn't her fault. It was more, she was having the cognitive dissonance that I was having about the whole situation.
She doesn't neither of you want to believe it.
Yeah, exactly. So I spend the night at my sister's house, and the next morning I gotta stop by the house early to get dressed and go to work. Get my work clothes on and go to work. So I stop by the house, go up into our bedroom to get dressed and changed for work, and lo and behold, I see Stan and Pam naked in bed together.
Oof.
Yeah. So that was a moment of clarity for me. So I knew at that point what was going on. Everything came together. I didn't know what to do because I wasn't, but that was a moment of clarity. And people have always said I'm very calm under pressure, and yeah, it might be one of the reasons why it might have pushed Pam away from me, because I have a very good poker face. But yeah, I went downstairs, grabbed the camera, and took a picture of them in bed together because I knew at that point Pam would probably lie and spin everything. So, so
I'm
I woke.
impressed. I'm impressed that you composed yourself long enough to go downstairs, get a camera. I think a lot of people, including myself, uh, it would be difficult to do anything other than see red in that moment.
Oh, I was seeing red too, but I think I thought better of it. Um, Took their picture. Um, Woke up Pam. Took the SD card out of the camera. Handed her the camera and left. She started following after me. Started screaming at me while she was following me and all that. But I left. Left the house. Um, so in the meantime, so that day while I was gone, she went to the courthouse and filed an ex parte PFA against me.
And just so people understand, the PFA, that go ahead and explain what that means.
So PFA is a domestic is a in my state it's called a protection from abuse. It's your typical domestic restraining order, and ex parte means that the judge grants it without hearing the other side's story. So that got me out of the house. Um,
It forced you out of the house by the judge's order.
yes.
That's
So so
incredible.
so the next day, Pam moves Stan's, I don't know, 5 or 6 horses to our horse farm, and there really wasn't much I could do about it at that point. Um, the PFA was filed. The hearing wasn't for another 2 weeks, so there really wasn't much I could do at that point. Because I couldn't contact her. I couldn't. Um, yeah, I couldn't contact the kids. My son was 5. My daughter was 3 at that point.
Yeah,
Um,
I wonder how that ex parte PFA is handled when there are children involved, such as in
y-
your case.
yes, it said I couldn't have any contact with the kids either. Um, and then also in her PFA, she also said that um, I couldn't contact any of her family either. So she didn't want me contacting her mom, her sister, or anybody either. So she was getting advice from someone, which was most likely Stan. Actually, rewind a little bit. Before I talked to my sister, I had called um, her cousin, her dad's cousin's wife, who was the nurse at the hospital, and asked her, "What's the story with Stan?" I'm like, "He's just spending a lot of time with Lisa right now." And she's like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "He's done this before where he has gone into, you know, made his way into families, and then then really started to get very close with the wife. But at that point, I still was, but yeah, she and I still kind of like talked ourselves out of it that that wasn't really what was happening because just like the whole thing was just the whole premise of it was just so mind blowing for us. So now we have the PFA. Um, the hearing is in 2 weeks. So we go to the hearing. Um, she pulls some trick that I can't. Um, yeah, it's a conflict of interest with my attorney because she and I had talked to another attorney in that law practice about something else. So so my attorney has to withdraw. So the case gets continued for like another 3 or 4 weeks. Um,
This is the hearing for the PFA because it's a temporary order. If I understand PFAs correctly.
right. It's a temporary order. Um, so I have to get a new attorney, which actually she did me a huge favor by doing that because I don't think my original attorney was very good at kind of looking back on it. So it delayed things by about 3 weeks. So at this point, I have to get I have to get an apartment, and so basically, I'm permanently off the farm at this point. So we have a hearing. We go to meet. Yeah, with the way PFAs work in my state, first you talk to a mediator before you go to the commissioner, and both of our pre, both of our attorneys were present. So so my new attorney, yeah, he lays it out. Yeah, he's like Pam's having an affair. She moved her affair partner in. She was caught in bed with her affair partner. Um, then the next day, she files the PF. She files the PFA, and the next day, she moves the affair partner's horses onto the farm. And the you know, she's alleging all these vile things, and most of it's just stuff like, yeah, I'm upset. Um, I'm a threat to myself. I'm a threat to my kids because I'm really upset about the divorce. I'm not taking it well emotionally, which actually, in hindsight, I look at that as emotional abuse too, because it's basically telling me I'm not allowed to process my emotions. So for me processing my emotions, I could lose my kids. Like that's what the effed up thing about that was. And you know,
So this is all part of the hearing for the PFA to go from being, I suppose,
a
something
temporary
likened to a temporary restraining order to a permanent restraining order,
to a permanent restraining order. So
including the children.
yes,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. The whole PFA process is there's a yeah. You get kind of like the reasoning behind it, but the evidence to get a PFA is basically 5149, and it becomes a permanent order when really it's doesn't really have that high of a legal threshold. So we go to the mediation, and my attorney lays it out like your client has not alleged any type of abuse. She's just basically complaining about her ex-husband, who is upset about having a divorce and an affair foisted on him. And her attorney is like, well, he went into the house and took pictures of him in bed naked. And my attorney was like, probably 98% of the time, it'd probably be a murder scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. And her attorney was like, oh, that's a good point. And my attorney was like, do you really want to go in front of the judge with this? And so my ex agrees to drop the PFA, and and in the meantime, we do put in temporary orders where I see the kids every other weekend. So okay, that's it's not perfect, but it gives some clarity to the divorce process at that point. Um, so
Okay, let me just jump in here real quick. It doesn't really get much worse than what you're describing. I mean, as you're I don't I forget which attorney, whether it was yours or hers, but yeah, a lot of these situations are going to end up into domestic violence or something worse. I'm shocked that you're able to maintain any kind of composure through the situation. I'm kind of like dumbfounded as I'm listening to your story, um, because again, I just have to keep bringing. I don't mean to keep bringing up the children, but this is we're beyond the scope of a divorce or even really an affair. When you've got one parent trying to push out the parental rights of another because they're having an affair, we're in new territory here. This is unbelievable.
turns out she and Stan were trying to absolutely destroy me. Um, so so we get temporary orders and things like set and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm still a complete emotional wreck at this point, but at least things are a little bit more clarity. Um, so fast forward to
Real quick, do you have personal allies, like friends and family, that are kinda helping you through this emotionally during this time? Because this is a hell of a deal to go through as one person.
yeah, I like actually her family was good in this too. I didn't always because yeah, as you know, blood is thicker than mud. So I always had
Right.
yeah. Once we really started getting the nitty gritty of the divorce, I always had to be careful with what I said to her sister and her mom because her sister was an attorney and her mom used to be a paralegal too. So yeah, so that's always something I had to be careful of. But there's several members of her family that reached out to me. Her yeah, my friends, my sister. Uh, I have a pretty small family, so not very many of my family members are even around that I even really knew. But yeah, for about a 2 or 3 month period, I had a rotation of probably about 10 people. I'll call one person each day, so I wouldn't be burdening everybody. I basically talk to each person maybe once every 2 weeks. So so that helped me through the initial point of it. And I also told myself like, look, I don't want my kids around Stan. He's an alcoholic. Yeah, I've seen him drink. Um, Pam is basically on a remote control with him. She does whatever he says. Um,
Does
so
your attorney give you any options in terms of what you can do to protect your rights as a parent, against essentially, you're just being bombarded with,
yeah.
like, this PFA and the hearing, like, what are you able to do to sort of counter, these claim not only counter these claims, but protect your rights and your time with your children?
So I had, like I said, I had excellent attorneys, and yeah, talking with my first attorney, um, the I'll call him Yoda because he was actually semi-retired. Actually used to be a family court judge. So, so yeah, he's good. But yeah, we're kind of just BSing in one of my meetings, and he's like, "You're a really smart guy. You have a master's degree. You know your case as much better than I can possibly know my case. Here's my advice to you. You need to somehow make time and spend a lot of time in the family court self-help center. Um, Read all the documentation, read all the pamphlets, go online, look up different cases, know all the rules, know all the laws, and how they apply to your case. And then when you come talk to me about it. Like I read this in the court. These are the details that I want to talk to you about. How does that impact me? So he taught me how to be as efficient as possible with my attorney's time. Um, and so fast forward to about Thanksgiving 2008. Um, the ex and I have our the ex is mad. Pam is mad at me about something. And I sent her a bunch of texts. I want to, can I pick up the kids tonight and things like that. She says no. She just come the next morning. I come the next morning and she's like gets mad at me and she kind of starts ranting and raving at me. And the next day she files another PFA against me. Come to find out, like the week she was just served that Thursday with a petition for custody, which in reality wasn't. It was a normal process of the divorce. Like, yeah, if you want the court to decide on custody, you have to file a petition and ask the court to do it. But she thought it was just, oh, he's trying to take the kids away from me and all that. So she files a PFA against me. Uh, all sorts of allegations. None of them really have merit. So we go. This time she doesn't have an attorney. She can't afford one. We go to mediation, and I say, let's go to trial. Okay, we go to the trial, and she gets completely destroyed. But it does help. My attorney. This is how good my attorney was. He got me a lot of information on the record, which ended up helping me later on when it came to alimony. Um, so so
This
yeah,
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understand. So this is to deal with the second PFA, or are we in now
yeah,
family court dealing with a divorce?
we're dealing with the second PFA, but I had an attorney that was looking at the long game, and he's trying to get as much stuff on the record that would help me later on in the divorce
I
that
see.
my ex-wife could not dispute. So we have the second PFA. It's dismissed. My ex calls stand up as a witness, and he spins the story how she can't sleep, how she's afraid of me, and all this kind of stuff. My attorney asked both her and him, like, so did he file any police reports? No. So okay, there's so you're not. She never really described anything other than she was just mad at me, basically. But one couple pieces of information. Um, we had seen early on in our marriage. She was having some really bad back and neck pain from a car accident that she was in, and she was having some trouble dealing with it. So she had seen an individual counselor. The counselor had talked to both of us. Kind of just help both of us deal with it, which is very appreciative, very helpful. I could tell Pam really loved me. Yeah, she was really upset about not being as good of a wife as she could be because of Yeah, because the back and neck pain that she was having from the car accident. So so she had talked. So I had talked to that counselor right after she had asked for the divorce, and evidently Pam had talked to that counselor after she asked for the divorce, but Pam would not go see that counselor in her office. She would only do it by phone, which this is 2008 and telehealth hadn't really taken off back then, which I kind of thought was kind of weird, but it turns out what my lawyer got out of the boyfriend, her affair partner, what like her affair partner testified that yes, Brad has been having a lot of trouble emotionally processing this. He's been really torn up about it. I think he's a threat to Pam. Blah 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 blah. My attorney asked him this. Was like, well, how do you know all this? You haven't seen him in 2 months. He was like, oh, when Pam had her counseling sessions with the counselor on the phone, I was in the room with her.
Okay, so just to sort of recap where we're at so far, she's now filed a second PFA against you.
Yes.
Luckily, it sounds like you've got a good attorney who's really looking out for you and is thinking not just about this PFA, but also long term with family court and a divorce. So he's really looking out for your interests.
Yes, he
Um,
was.
so go ahead and take us through that. I'm sorry, and I do want to say one other thing. Stan is present during this hearing. Is that what I heard?
She called him as a witness.
Okay.
So he's not in the whole hearing, but he is called as a witness, and he's testifying about how she wakes up in the middle of the night with in fear, wakes up shaking, and my attorney asks Stan, "Well, how do you know all this?" He said, "She's my girlfriend, and we sleep together, and I live with her." So so that comment was like a dagger through my heart, but when it came to alimony, it was the money shot.
Oh, I bet.
Because in my state, once you cohabitate, you're ineligible for alimony. And it was on the record in court. So, she, she tried to justify it as much as she can after that. But there was 4 words that he said, and she did not object to it. There you go. So, so that really helped. That those are the type of things where a really skilled litigator can can really help you. Um, like to get those little details where it may not matter for when when in a divorce you're going to be in court multiple times for different things that just little tidbits like that are like could be like gold down the road and that was so so the PFA is dismissed. um Pam storms out of this court screaming how the system's all against her and all that. Uh, Bailiff makes a comment that wow, she's a wild one. Which, uh, to be frank, a family court bailiff may just about be the one of the best jobs in the world if you like watching drama. So,
That's true.
so that PFA was dismissed. Um, so about 2 weeks later, um, Pam, myself, Pam's mom, and one of Pam's good friends, we meet at Pam's mom's house to talk about custody. So, during these 2 months, I'm putting together a plan of what I want custody to look like, and my plan is 50-50 shared. Um, Kids are with me Monday, Tuesday with mom, Wednesday, Thursday, then we alternate weekends, so it's 50-50. Um, I talked with my boss with work, kind of rearranged my work schedule a little bit to work around that schedule. lined up daycare and aftercare and those kind of things. Presented it to Pam, and Pam agreed to it. Her mom was like, "Wow, that's a really good plan that you guys put together." And her friends like, "Yeah, that's a really good plan that you guys put together too."
You
So,
and Pam put this plans together with the help of her family,
right,
without the presence of any attorneys?
correct.
Okay.
Stan wasn't there. So we go to the court the next day. We get it. We get the get the file the custody agreement. And with the clerk where we both sign and notarize it, and so that becomes the official agreement. Um, so we have 50-50 shared. And then I don't know, maybe like 2 weeks later or so, and the judge had already signed the custody order. So it was official at this point, but yeah, maybe like 1 or 2 weeks later. Uh,
So the judge can grant that custody before you're even officially divorced? Am I understanding that right?
right. So in um, my state's very efficient with divorce. Uh, you have the same judge for everything, but it splits apart custody, child support, property division, and the divorce decree. So all four, you don't need one before. You don't have to have all like custody, property division, child support done before the divorce decree is granted. All you need to do, like for the divorce decree, you just have to have the 6 month waiting period completed, and the decree is granted. Everything else kind of follows on their own schedule. So it actually makes things really efficient. Um, so custody's settled, and maybe like 2 weeks later, after the judge signs it, I get a call from the friend that was at the house putting together the custody agreement, and she tells me, you have to come pick up the kids. Um, Pam is having a nervous breakdown, and we are going to take her to inpatient psych. I'm like, okay. So, so evidently, Stan had been giving her a lot of crap about agreeing to that 50-50 custody. And it just like put her over the edge. And yeah, she cracked. Um, she gets out after like 3 or 4 days. I filed an emergency custody petition, but that gets dismissed. Um, because evidently, like, she put holes in the wall. The kids were there, and yeah, it was not a good situation. Then also, sometime around this time, I had gotten a call from Stan's dad's wife again. Stan was arrested for assaulting his dad. His dad had a no contact order with him. Stan went over his dad's house and roughed up his dad, and but that case ended up getting a kind of a probation before judgment. It was a pretty minor thing, but it kind of planted the seeds. Like, Stan is a pretty violent person, and he's really manipulating Pam. So
Did you know this? Like when he was living in the double wide and working on the farm, did you suspect or notice violent streaks or tendencies in Stan?
no, I did not notice any of that.
Okay.
So now we're in a situation where um, things kind of settle down after all that. So spring 2009, we sell the house, which, you have to remember, 2009 was just about the worst time to sell a house. And by some miracles, Pam and I actually walked away with some cash in our pocket. Wasn't much, but beat the alternative of being underwater.
Yeah.
Um, but so Pam has to move. She finds a small horse farm an hour and a half away. from where the kids go to school in another state, which, like, okay, that's pretty inconvenient. But in the meantime, when we're when we're moving all the furniture out of the house, I'm kind of getting my furniture and stuff. She's and all that. Stan's not on the farm when I'm moving my stuff out. But her friend who helped us with the custody and her husband are helping me, like, load up my van and kind of being refs. But Pam and I are getting along just fine. We're kind of going through the house. Okay, you want that? Nah, you can take it. Okay, cool. Everything is perfectly cool, and everything's fine. Um, so she's living, um, hour and a half away from the kids' school, which means she'd have to drive the kids an hour and a half to get them to school. And me in the meantime, when I got my apartment, it was out of the school district, but we live in an extremely small state, so it's only like maybe like a 30-minute drive, so it really wasn't that big of a deal. But she was living in the school district, but now she moved out of the school district to another state, and I'm like, oh, that's a big problem. So I filed a custody petition because of that move, because it was a change in circumstance. That kind of set her off again. So this is now Mother's Day weekend, 2009. So I'm supposed to have the kids that weekend. I email Pam and say, hey, it's Mother's Day. How about we meet on Saturday afternoon, and then you take the kids on Mother's Day. You can drop them off at school, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay. I thought I was being nice. Uh, the kids and I even bought her flowers to give to her. So we show up at the kid exchange, and by this point, after that second PFA, whenever I'm alone with Pam, if I don't have someone with me who's on my side, I always have a voice activated recorder going. Um, because I don't want to. I'm not messing around with these PFAs anymore. So we're doing the exchange. I get out of the car. I go up to open the back of the car, and they get the flowers and then get the kids, and she's like, I want to talk to you. I'm like, okay. She's like, I found a place to rent in the town where the schools are. I'm like, okay. But she's like, I need a co-signer on the lease though. I'm like,
You're kidding me.
I'm like, I'm not. We're divorced. I'm not co-signing on a lease with you. And she loses it. She gets in my face. She's like, "You're the lyingest, biggest son of a bitch." I pull out my voice recorder, show it to her, hoping that she would be quiet. Then I put it back into my pocket. Then I get in the front seat of my car, get back in my car, get in the driver's seat, close the door. She's sitting there screaming at me through the open window for like 10 minutes. She calls the cops, and the cops come. Um, the cops won't. The cops separate us. I'm sitting there in the car, and she's going nuts with the cops. Yeah, I mean, all this is on tape, and
This is the meeting location to exchange the kids. Is that right?
yeah, it's outside of a supermarket parking lot. So she's just screaming at me through the car window. Meanwhile, I'm doing the. I didn't know it at the time, but I'm basically doing. Yeah, probably after the second PFA, I was always like doing the gray rock method with her. I didn't know it at the time, but it was just don't say a word to her unless it's absolutely necessary. Don't give her any ammunition, intending to make her even madder. But yeah, she's screaming at me for like 10 minutes. I have the whole thing on tape. The cops let us go, and then 2 days later, I get a call from the cop that was called on the scene, and told me that there's a warrant for your arrest. You need to come to the police department and be processed. I'm like, what's going on? And the cop was like, sometimes your boss goes over your head. He didn't say anything else. Like, okay. So I go get go to the police. I get arrested for offensive touching. Um, and um, then she also files a PFA against me because of that situation. Another PFA.
So we're up to number
Uh,
3, right?
she's on number three. Um, she's on number three. Um, so so we go to court. The PFA hearing is before the criminal hearing for the offensive touching, and basically what my lawyer says is this is what you want, because yeah, explained it to me. The PFA has a burden of proof of preponderance of evidence. So if the PFA is dismissed, all I'm going to do is, you know, when we go to the go to court, I'm going to just submit to the prosecutor the PFA and the PFA dismissal, and ask the prosecutor, do you really want to go through with this? So because if you can't get a if you can't get a conviction with a burden of proof as preponderance of evidence, you're not going to get it when there's beyond reasonable doubt.
So you have your third PFA hearing before being arrested and charged with offensive touching. That's a separate deal you have to
Right.
contend with.
Right.
All right,
Right.
go ahead.
So we have the PFA hearing. Um, and before the hearing, my ex subpoenas the my tape recording. My attorney says that's absolutely perfect, because then she submits it into evidence that she faked the whole thing. So
As you're going through this, and I cannot imagine being in your shoes, but you do have an attorney that sounds like he's really looking out for your interests. He's kind of saying this is going to work out great. Yeah, let's go ahead and bring that, submit that for evidence that'll actually strengthen your case. But how are you personally dealing with all of this? Because now you're dealing with a third PFA hearing, and now you're dealing with being charged with offensive touching. Were you actually formally arrested and arraigned for that?
yeah, I was fully processed, fingerprinted, arraigned, and all that. They let me go after they processed me. Yeah, I didn't have to pay any bail or anything like that, but still a pain in the rear. Um,
But how are you managing this? Like mentally, emotionally, are you holding it together?
yeah, I'm holding it together as best as I could, which wasn't that great. So we have the PFA hearing. She has a she has like the domestic violence counselor who I think went with her to the police station to file the formal charges. The counselor was with her. It wasn't an attorney, but it was basically a social worker to give emotional support and all that during the PFA hearings. Sitting behind her, stands there too. My parents are with me as well. Um, so she goes first, and her first piece, yeah, she describes to the commissioner what happened, and she's like, "I want to present into evidence this audio tape of the whole situation. It'll clearly show how violent um, my ex husband was to me." We're like, "Okay." So even though it was an audio tape, I mean, you could tell exactly what happened because you hear me getting out of my car, you hear me open up the back of my trunk, then you hear me getting back. When she starts screaming at me, you hear me get back into my car, screaming at me right, uh, right through the car window with, with the kids there in the car too. Um, and once once the part of the tape where the cops show up, the domestic violence counselor just gets up and leaves. She realizes she's been had, um, and um, then the judge gives his decision, and dismisses the charges because they're completely ridiculous. Um, I mean, I didn't have to testify. You know, the after she presented her evidence and the tape, my attorney stood up and said, "Your Honor, I'd like to move to have this case dismissed as the evidence presented by Miss King. It shows that my client did not do anything wrong. All he did was, when he was confronted by Miss King, he de-escalated the situation by getting in back into his car and sitting there quietly until the police showed up."
Why on earth would her attorney advise her to submit that?
She did not have an attorney. She couldn't afford one.
Oh, oh my God.
I
Okay.
think Stan was her attorney at that point.
I don't mean to laugh, but this is absolutely absurd.
It was very absurd. So yeah, that was the end of the third PFA, and it's Mother's Day weekend of 2009, and things things pretty much settle down. Um, Only big drama that happened in probably like the next 6 months or so was, we did have the custody hearing that I had filed. Um, and she was able to weasel out of the move in. She said, like, on the days that she had the kids, she was living at a friend's house in the school district, and the judge basically bought bought her story. Um, the we played the tape from the PFA hearing, um, and um, and the judge admonished her harshly for that because she was screaming at me, insulting me, yelling at me in front of the kids the entire time, and said that behavior is completely unacceptable. But really didn't do much. And one thing I forgot: a couple weeks after the PFA hearing, we had the trial for the offensive touching. So we show up at the trial, and since it's a very minor charge, it was actually basically in traffic court. So the prosecutor was actually the cop that arrested me, and the cop knew, my attorney sent the cop the audio tape beforehand, and the cop did not show up for the hearing, so the judge just dismissed all charges with prejudice. So that was completely taken care of
Yeah, I was getting
without
ready
even
to ask you about the offensive
yeah
touching.
without even having to go to a hearing. So yeah, so that's the yeah, kind of like the first year. Um,
My thoughts, as always, tend to return to children. I'm very sensitive about children and their protection. Um, how old are your children during this first year?
my daughter is 3 and my son is 5.
How did they handle it during this time when you spent time with them? What was that like?
I think they internalized it a lot, um, but we had a lot of fun. Um, One thing my parents really noticed was, like, my parents had a beach house, so we spent a lot of time down at their house too when they were with me on weekends and stuff. Um, my daughter would not let me out of her sight, and if I left the house for something, she would just cry the whole time I was gone.
Did they give you, because I assume when the children are with their mother, Stan is around. What are those interactions like? Or do they tell you about that?
I mean, I went through the divorce parenting classes and read all the books and all that. I really did not ask any questions about what went on at mom's house because I did not want to put the kids in that situation where they had to um, tell me what's going on.
Well, I had read some of your stories. There are, and perhaps you're going to get to it, and so I apologize if I'm jumping ahead, but it sounds like maybe later on there are issues related around domestic abuse involving Stan, and that's I wasn't so much
Yes.
asking did you pry into their relationship with their mother, but rather did they confide in you or tell you something that concerned you?
They didn't confide in me, and what I found out later, I'm not sure how much you read it ahead. I had eventually gotten sole legal custody of the kids because of the domestic violence that you had asked about, and the friend that had helped us with custody, helped us move, said that Pam and Stan put the fear of God in the kids not to tell me what went on at their house. But then they would also give the kids the full interrogation whenever they came back from my house. I suspected that was going on, and I think in part two I'll go into some of that.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
but yeah,
I suspected I was jumping ahead, but
yeah.
again, my thoughts tend to return to children and make sure that they're doing all right. They're obviously I have a mother that's completely unhinged, and I worry that at no point during her PFA filing, calling the police, having outbursts, yelling at you, that she's really thinking about the interests of the children.
No, no. I mean, looking back over the from winter of 2008 to like February of 2021, every decision she made was in the best interest of Stan, not in the best interest of her, not in the best interest of the kids.
That's sad.
Yeah, yeah, it's very sad.
Okay. So we're kind of through year one. It sounds like maybe she God, I hope she gave up on the PFAs. Um
No, 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 she did not, and it actually gets worse after that. So
tune in again next week to hear part 2 of Brad's story. And don't forget to check out our older episodes of Tales of the Cheated anywhere you get your podcasts or by visiting our website at www.thecheated.show. If you're interested in coming on the program and sharing your story of infidelity, please email us at stories@thecheated.show.